Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we have a very good video for you guys, and this one here is going to be related to D5 render, and we're going to go in depth with how to use the view options in D5 render. And by that I mean we're going to go through the 2-point perspective, the parallel tool, the perspective tool, and with that we're going to see how do you use the isometric and the align tool, and at the end we're going to look in how can you combine that with the section tool so you can generate very custom elevations and sections. And finally we're going to show you how to customize those and stylize them so you can bring those to a presentation or construction documents potentially, and you can generate your own graphics and style for your company or your business or just your projects in general. You're a freelancer or a student. So I hope you enjoy this video. I know that if we have provided enough value in this video or in the past videos, we will love if you can subscribe and like the video. That will help us support the channel. And this channel, my name is Danny, and this channel is mainly discussing architecture visualization for architects. So we talk about tools that are related to just architecture and how does it relate with real-time engines and AI. So if you're really into getting visualization and representation in architecture to the next level, make sure you stay connected to this channel, and please subscribe one more time, and we go ahead and start with the video. This is going to be sort of like an in-depth masterclass on how to use views in D5 render, specifically to do architectural drawings or just renderings, whether it's aerial, whether it's for a specific project. So make sure to go through the whole video and really understand how to use these views. And if you already know exactly what you need, you feel free to skip off on and get exactly what you need as far as the views that we're showing. But just so kind of you get an idea of what we're going to see today, we're going to go and really understand what a perspective view is, what a parallel view is, what a 2-point perspective is, how to use an isometric, how to use the align tool, and then from there we're going to go to section tool here, and we are going to cut sections, and we are going to generate sections or elevations that you can then render and use those either for animation or a presentation or for your architectural drawings later on. So hope you enjoy the video, and let's go to the first module here. So now we're good here. Okay, so let's start all over again. Okay, so for this module, I'm gonna show you guys how to create, how we're gonna go through the views in D5 render. The views are really helpful for creating a camera, for generating camera views and creating scenes for animations, meaning that once you have a specific camera in place, you're able to come here to the image and generate a scene. And from the scene, you're able to then create animations. Once you go to animations, if you really want some animations here, and once you create a clip, you add that, and then you add a specific camera from the scene that you created. So again, all that seems a little complex right now that I'm talking a little fast. But right now we're going to go through the views first, so you know how to set those up first. It's pretty simple. So if you have a model, right, once you have a model, you're able to navigate, and then here on the right side corner, you will have something called camera. Once you click on camera, and again, we're not going to go through the exposure compensation or anything of these things here yet, but you just have to understand that a lot of this is how you set up the cameras. So a lot of that is like the focal points and the exposure as far as the lighting goes and all that, but it's more like a camera setup in a way. The same with depth of field. I will leave that for a different video, but we're really going to be focusing on today is really understanding in depth views in D5 render. And the reason why they are very important is because a lot of times, just like any specific architecture, it's really going to help you to understand for what you can really utilize D5 render. Before I really understand the power of views, I was just using D5 render to set up cameras and renderings. But once you understand that these cameras are really purposeful on how to generate a very good image, as far as like whether or not you want to use a 2-point perspective, isometric view, perspective view, all those are very helpful for you to eventually create a much better end product. And that's kind of what I want to go with this with you, especially because D5 render in the last view, they in the last iteration in the 2.11, they added these things here, which is the line, and then the isometric view, and they can be very useful for your presentations or animations, or even just do some even architectural drawings here. Not here, but as far as a layout goes. So let's start with the first thing. As you can see, is like the moment you start moving the camera, you will automatically this will already go to hide again. So every time you move, it will hide. So you'll have to, come back again and do that. So that's why sometimes is good to have already a camera set up. You already have it. In that way, you're not losing that you're changing things. But so let's start with perspective. So perspective is very useful if you want to generate a specific angle. That percent is not specifically, you don't need that alignment because and I'll show you an example. But for instance, let's say I want to really generate something that is very close here and is like that. I just want to generate that image like that. That will be good for two-point perspective. I'm sorry, for that perspective view, because first of all, perspective, parallel, and 2-point perspective. That's what you have here. And a lot of times the parallel is mainly for really fat drawings. So if you want to generate an elevation or a section or something that is mainly going to be used for a two-plane drawing, that's when I will use the parallel. Also an isometric, that's when I will use the parallel too. The 2-point perspective is when you really want to generate straight lines. Generally speaking, I'll try to use a 2-point perspective when I'm a little bit, like when you kind of want to do perspective views on a corner of building. So for instance, like this, that will be a nice 2-point perspective. Or like maybe you are going to the other side, that might be a good point perspective because it will straighten the lines. So you see, whenever you're doing that, maybe these are not 90 degrees. Maybe these are like 88 degrees or something. So whenever you click on 2-point perspective, it will straighten everything up. So everything looks aligned rather than the perspective. But let's say, for instance, now you're getting a close-up of this, and you see how you're already kind of getting a perspective. You don't really need, I mean, you could get like a 2-point perspective, and that's fine. It will straighten up the edges. The problem sometimes is when you have a very, like a large scale, like you're doing this and you have a very large scale building or skyscraper, sometimes whenever it sharpens the lines and everything, it will distort a few things. So that's something you kind of have to kind of keep an eye on. Like you see how much it distorted the view, right? So you have to understand when it makes sense for it to do a 2-point perspective. Most of the time, like for instance, me in this case, I'd rather have a perspective view because the moment it straightens everything up, it really sometimes distorts things. So for instance, you might have like a sculpture here or something. So the moment you straighten things up, it might change a little bit the shape of it, or it might just generate a misunderstanding of how that works. So whenever you do very close-ups, I really just rather keep it in 2-point perspective, in a perspective view. But whenever you're kind of going more like outside, right? Whenever you are kind of going and generating a view from a corner of a building, as long as the building doesn't have like a massive scale, like if it's a skyscraper, then you might want to keep it, you might want to straighten it, but you might want to take the camera out enough for whenever it straightens the angles, it doesn't distort too many things. So that's the thing, you want to balance it, to really be careful of how much is the 2-point perspective distorting it, and when and if it's distorting too much, then that's a sign that you might want to be using the perspective instead of the 2-point perspective. But in general, if you have residence or something that is in a very decent scale of a structure and you're just getting a corner of a building, I will definitely use the 2-point perspective. Also, for an architectural purposes, it just looks a lot better that you don't have like slanted angles sometimes. So in this case, for instance, for this specific view, I will definitely use 2-point perspectives. The more closer I get and the more it starts distorting the angles, I will just stay with perspective. So you have those two. Now, when will you use a parallel? Parallel will you use, generally speaking, when you wanna, in my case, personally, in my opinion, is when you wanna have like something that is more flattened. So when you wanna, for instance, generate elevation or a section out of this, something like it kind of looks like, if I wanna generate a view here that actually looks like an elevation, then is when you will generate a parallel. So for instance, let's say I wanna generate, you see how, if I try to do this, that's cool, but it's still, you have some perspective to it. So for you to kind of straighten those angles and actually make it look like an elevation, you will have to come here and use a parallel. Now here you can say that it kind of didn't want to collaborate with me, but you see how it starts cutting this and it starts kind of looking at it as a elevation now. Now I'll show you later on a trick for you to actually get that elevation whenever you combine the parallel with a section plane tool here. But right now is for me to give you that understanding on why will you use that. Or for instance here, if you want to use a top, right, you want to create some sort of like a site, you see how whenever you say top, it automatically sets itself for a parallel. Is because it's giving you that nice flattened drawing. So even though it's a 3D model, you could use this as a site plan. Now, of course, the more down or here you go, sometimes it will, you know, if I put this in perspective, you see how you will start getting perspectives here. But the parallel you get, it starts cutting and it looks more as a drawing. The same whenever I do front, it starts looking as a drawing, you see, and it starts like cutting the plane. It automatically cuts the plane for you, but then later on with the section tool, oh no, that was looking so good. Forward, left, you see how that looks? So that's potentially something you could be using as an elevation. Okay, because it's flattening it, right? So those are the main things you will be using all these ones here, right? So the top, front, left, bottom, left, back, and right, you're generally speaking gonna use it with a parallel, just because that will be mostly if you want to generate some sort of sections or elevations. Now, sometimes it will not cut in the right way you want it to cut, and that's when we will eventually go to the next module and use section tools. But that is pretty much how you use the perspective, parallels, 2-point perspectives, and the top, front, left, bottom, back, and right. So now in the next module, we're gonna really go a little more in depth on how you use the isometric, the align, and then the section tool. Okay, so now that we already look at these ones here, now we're gonna look into the isometric and the align tool. So let's start with isometric. So the isometrics, you have to understand that, so it's a way of that D5 render creates, or any other program will create technically 8 views, right? So whenever you have, and then wonder if I can actually, I wish I could draw on these one here, but just think about this. So whenever you have an isometric, you're pretty much having like, you know, like just think about there's a cubicle here, and then you will have 4 points of intersection. You will have one on this side, one on this side, one on this side, one on this side. So let me see, and you go and have, I wish I could draw on this. I mean, it's not, you have a building here, right? It's a 3D model building. You will have a cubicle. Think about a cube that you will have on that model of yours. So the isometric is pretty much creating a camera on each corner here, right? With a specific similar, it will have the same angle that it's looking towards the object. Now, if you think about it, when you see that dash line right here, is that is these 4 here that you see. So if I change the color here, these 4 that you are here are sort of irrelevant because these 4 are technically underground, right? So that's if you're seeing it from under up. I'm not saying that are not useful, but you're most likely not going to be using this unless there's very specific things. So the ones that you're really going to be using is these ones, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So just think about it as these are like, you know, they 4 of us have the same, all of them have the same angle, and it creates these nice isometric views. So these will be one isometric view, and that's why whenever you push isometric, it will go directly, it will set up directly to parallel, because it will automatically create this architectural drawing And I don't know, you probably have seen on some of these architectural competitions where they have these like dash lines and they have everything separated. So that's a nice way of doing the isometric. And you can technically take out that and put it in perspective and everything, but then it stops being isometrics, right? It stops being an isometric. The isometric, it's on a parallel. And that's how you see how now it detected a different one. So the way the ISO works is that you're in perspective, and you will go to a specific corner of the building or the structure you have, and as soon as you hit ISO, it will go to the closest one it has, and it will create a isometric out of that one. So kind of going back to the board here, if you have, let's say you have this building here, and then you have the 4 cameras here. Let's say you're rotating your camera and you are somewhere along this point. The moment you push isometric, your camera will automatically go here, because it will go and take the closest point, and it will create an isometric for you with a parallel. So that's what DeFi is doing. So that's, you want to create the reason why it's so cool is because once you create an ISO here, you can save the scene, and then you can, potentially you can move this object up, down, change layers, and and do a lot of like cool stuff that then later on you can bring to Photoshop or Illustrator and create these presentations that are kind of isometric, that are separated and all that. So that's why ISOs are very useful. And now we're going to go to Align, which this is definitely one of my favorite tools, the Align tool. And with this one here is a little hard to explain, because this one here has a lot of curves. And the moment you put a line on one curve, then it just goes down or goes up. So it does funny things. But the reason why they have a line here is because, again, I'm going to go back again. Let's say, think about this in a plan view. So in a plan view, let's say you have, this is your building. And I know I wish I could have like a pen on this, but let's say that's your building. And generally, a lot of times when you see that left, right, and bottom, everything is assuming that you have like a north, south, west, east. So hopefully, right, it's kind of that way. So whenever you say left, you'll have left here, right here, front here, but let's say you have this building that has this diagonal shape here, and you have this diagonal shape there, and now you want to have a view of this, right? That it doesn't really align with this one or this one. So whenever you say back, it will give you the view of this, but now you don't know how to get a view of that specific one, right? Unless you manually go with the perspective, you set up that, but that's why you have the Align tool, because you can with the Align tool, you click on that face and it will automatically create a view like this for you. So again, not that this is a perfect example because it doesn't have a face here that I can click on and automatically go. But for instance, here you see how this wall has that angle here, right? So maybe that's not completely right, because right would be this wall, but this doesn't have the angle. So if I come here and I click on Align, it will automatically create this arrow for you. You see how it's down. This will create like a little, and it will literally create a little angle. So it's not that it will, because I click on this, it will just create like a back. It will actually take the whatever angle that is with. So if I click on this, it's going to create that angle. So if I click on that, it automatically goes parallel. It automatically creates a perspective, but it's aligned in a perpendicular way with that specific wall, right? And then from there, of course, you can do parallel, right? And it creates that sort of elevation, or you can keep it in perspective. But now it's perpendicular to that specific angle of that specific wall. And that's why, at the beginning when I saw the DeFi thing, I thought it was very cool, but I couldn't really understand how to use it until I actually start playing with it. And then it was pretty easy. This building, again, I wouldn't show you with this one because it does some very funny things, because it's not. So for instance, let's say I want to have I want to have that straight. So maybe that will work, right? So as you see, if I want to create like an elevation on that, that's not in the same angle, so it's gonna give me a little like that. But let's say I want a specific plane view on that specific angle there. So what I would do, yeah, I will go to camera, align, and I will click on that beam, and it will give me a straight view of that one. And now you see how whenever I create a scene of that, it will be looking specifically perpendicular to that angle of that thing, right? So that is finally how you use it. So now we're gonna go to the last module that we're gonna see. We're gonna show you how to use these with the section tools, with the section, for you to generate these awesome elevations, floor plan cuts, or sections that you will need for you to then stylize cool drawings. Okay, so we are in the last two modules, so bear with me guys, because here's when it comes, it gets fun, I guess. But here is where you can combine everything that we've seen with views a lot of times with sections. So the first thing to use the section tool is to kind of go here to menu. So you'll go to menu here, and then, because if you're trying to go here right away, you're not gonna have this. So I learned that the hard way. So you'll have to go to menu. Menu, you go to preferences. In preference, go to widget. And in widget, you go to section tools. That's where you will have it, and you will activate that. There is a chance you might have to restart, but there's a chance that you might not. So I'm not sure about restarting. I don't remember whether or not I restarted, but I'm sure that DeFi will let you know. And if for whatever reason you click on the widget and you don't see this icon here, you might need to restart just so it shows up. So there are two parts to this tool. So you have the section plane, and then you have the section cube. So we're gonna start with the section plane. So the section plane, if you are familiar with Revit or with ArchiCAD, it's pretty much as if you're going to a plan view and then you cut a section or elevation. You cut it, you have you create your section or elevation on a line here, right? So you have a building there, and then with Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever you have, you create let's say elevation like that. So it automatically knows that you are cutting a plane in that way. So for instance, if you have a site that goes like this, you know that your elevation is cutting it there. The same with a section. If you create a section from a floor plan in Revit or ArchiCAD that goes that way, you know that it's cutting here. So that's pretty much what we're doing. We're specifying with this section plane, we're pretty much creating a line, and we're specifying where do you want it to cut. The great thing about this is because we're in a 3D model, you can specify whether or not you want it to cut in plane, you want it to cut it on side, what angle you want to cut it. So let's say I'm gonna click on this, and you see how it automatically goes crazy. So that's the one thing at the beginning you might wanna. It's starting to pick planes. So let's say I want to just have like a floor plan, right? Like I'm just gonna click on this. I know it looks a little bit off. The good thing is that once you click on it, then it will generate inspection here. It will generate gizmos, and it will generate a layer here. So you can actually control that. So I can, come here, rename it, and put it, floor plan section, floor plan 1 section cut, right? So it can specify like, hey, I want to cut the first floor, right? So the great thing is, like, for instance, you lose it, you can always go back, of course, create a folder where you have sections, click on it, and you will automatically have it there. And you can kind of go and really understand, okay, if it's first floor, maybe I just want to cut it there, right? And then now you can combine the views, because now if I go here and I go to top, now I have a view. Oh, my bad, sorry. I go back again to top, and with that parallel, you have a technically almost like a floor plan, right? Now, of course, unfortunately, I don't have thickness in this plan, but what you can do eventually, you can kind of have a fill, and in that fill, you can, where you're cutting, whatever it's cutting, it can generate a fill, so you can have a fill of the walls there. But unfortunately, I don't have wall thicknesses right now, but that's something you can do. Maybe if I there's some more thicknesses here. So, but you see how you can, if this was the thickness of a wall, you see how it's generating potentially a thickness where it's cutting, but you have like a thickness there. But if you have a wall, a 2x4 or a 2x6 wall, and you do like a top parallel, right? Then you start having that sense of like having like almost like a floor plan or a nice like diagrammatic thing where you are showing like a floor plan, but still like with a nice 2D image on it. And you can, the great thing is like you can still generate a scene and make sure that the other scenes, you just hide that as a layer. You just hide it and save the views. In that way, that specific cut is not in all the views. So that specific, let's call it layer, is just living in that specific view, right? So just like you're managing layers in Revit or ArchiCAD or Rhino, it's just pretty much a layer that you can manage in a view. So that's a cool way to generate, you know, as you're saying, like, and then you can also do that with the opposite, right? So for instance, if I do that and now I want to have like another section and I want to say, okay, now I wanted to cut this, like, now this is like a little tricky, right? I need to select one of these steps here. So you might want to kind of go, it gets a little tricky to select, to be honest. Of course, this one here is even trickier than usual because it has a bunch of angles. Normally wouldn't be this hard. Also, you can select and eventually rotate it. I kind of feel sometimes lazy to do that. For instance, here, you know, it generated one again, and I might have to just say, hey, I want to not do that. I want to rotate it 90 degrees. 90 degrees or 180. I was probably 90 degrees, I guess. I was probably, let's say 0 here, 90 here. Let's just do that for now. But I'm saying you can control it with the gizmos and everything. Normally, you'll have it a lot more easier if you don't have like these weird shapes that I have. But yeah, so that's kind of how you will control it on the other side. Right, and you see how both of them are working right now. So you are cutting on this as a plan, and you're cutting it on this side too, and that's cool. If you want to generate a very cool like view like that, then you can do that. But let's say you don't want that one. So before you save the scene, you can use these to unhide that, and now you have the cut of that. Right, now you have the cut of that. Without you having, you know, and whenever you're doing animations, you can do the same. You can kind of have it there, and then in another view, you don't have it. But that's how you pretty much section planes work. Now, I'm just gonna hide both of them here, right? So you are going pretty much back again to a model. Now we're gonna do the other one that is, let me bring this here. That is the section cube. But so here's how it works. So now we talk about the section plane. Now we're gonna talk about the section cube. So whenever you click on the section cube, the scale of this is huge. But generally speaking, you will be able to click on something, and then it will generate opening. And normally, again, the scale of this building is huge. But what you would do is you're gonna see. So let's say I'm gonna do this for the purpose of it. You can change the scale of this cube, and it will do is cut, but it will cut it in a way like as if it's a cube. So you can see how you are cutting a section, you're cutting a plane in a cube way. Now the great thing about this is that you can, of course, you don't have to keep it with a scale of a cube. You can take these out and say, I want the y-axis to be a lot bigger, right? And now you create that, right? And now you have like a sort of like very customized section, right, that you can do, or whether you just want to cut a specific part of the building or something like that. So you can pretty much like a cube that you can move around and cut sections through the building. A lot of times, the great thing is like whenever you're doing this, you can also do the fill, kind of like what you do with the section plane, right? Let's see here, and then you see, so whatever it's cutting, it's gonna give you a black fill. Also, you can change that, right? So you can change that to a color, let's say red, and and then you can preview fill color, make sure to, yeah, and then you see wherever it's cutting, it's gonna give you that nice red tone there. You might have to keep clicking the preview color so it updates. But you see how you can, once you save the scene, you see how you can have some very cool diagrammatic sections here. You can also click here on the affected by light, and it will generate as if it's actually affected by light, right? The fact that you're actually creating those openings there. Affected by weather too, if you wanted to, if it's raining or something. So that means that that area is affected by the weather too. So that is something to, you know, it's affecting the outside. If you say outside, it will invert, like it will actually invert the thing, right? So, I guess that's, you want to isolate the thing and you just want to have that as the main thing here. And then you want to kind of create your visibility layer. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but that's the main thing. So, and again, you can kind of come here, you can change the name, you know, ideally you will save that in a folder, and then you will be able to control in the scene that you want. So those are the main things. Now, here is another thing. So let's say, so now we're gonna go to the last module that will be how to stylize these in order to generate a cool drawing. So let's go to the last module here. Okay, so for this last module here, and before we go to this one here, guys, if there's something you like to learn or a topic you want me to talk about related to architectural visualization, whether it's real-time renderings or AIs or some other technologies, just let me know, put it in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and like the video so more people can see it. And yeah, I appreciate your support. So for this last one here, we're gonna talk about stylization of the images. So what does that mean is like, how can you bring these images and actually make it like stylize it? You can bring white models, you can have 2D, like things that actually look like a drawing. So kind of we add that level of whether it's realism or whether it's more aligned to a construction document. How can you stylize the rendering for it to kind of help you with whatever you need? So for this specific example, I cut a section plane, kind of what we already talked about. And what I'm going to do is create an elevation here. So you see how with the section plane, I can control how what areas do I want to see. So because it's an elevation, I really want to try to get it as close as I can to the building. And then with that on, I'm going to go to, I want to say this was left side, right? So you see how now it gave me the parallel. So this is as close as it's going to get to an elevation here. So with this here, now that we have this, you can potentially here, if you want to, and I suggest you to do this because you never know when you're going to lose something. So it's good to just have saved the image. The first thing I'll do is create a scene here, right? So once you create a scene, it will save the layers here. So let's see. Oh, actually, by creating a scene, you meaning that you're going to come here and say add scene. And it would automatically create that scene, and I'm just gonna call it elevation 1. And once you have that elevation 1, now you have that cut right there. And the great thing about that is, oh, well, actually don't move it, just keep it like that. I zoom it in, so you can always just go back to that same scene. So you have that one. And then in effects, here is where I'll recommend you. Here's where you can actually create some very cool stylization images here. So you can kind of have like, what is it called? Ambient occlusion, right? To maybe have some shading, right? So if you want to have, maybe you can have these ambient occlusion along with a 2D drawing, and you can put that in Photoshop and it will have a very nice white model, render from it. And you can have like an outline mode, and you see how now you have a nice architectural drawing potentially. And if you want to, you can clean up the layers here. You can, for instance, take all the little people out and take all the trees out, and then just have the drawing in. So for instance, out of that, I will come here and I will add another scene, right? And this will be elevation 2. So you see how the first one has the colors, but the second one doesn't have the colors, right? So now you can potentially put in Photoshop or whatever it is that you use, you can put these on top of the other one, right? And then, for instance, You can create another one here. So for instance, here you can kind of change the line weight. You can add or not a background, and if you do add that white background here, you see how now it even takes out the shading, and now you have a 2D drawing that it could just be like based out of a AutoCAD or Revit, right? And you can change the line width here, right? You can now see depth. I mean, I think it wouldn't count because here you have just the background, but you can add the outline mode. You potentially can add more weight to it, less weight to it. What is this one here? So, but you can see how you can stylize these to whatever you want. Also, once you render it, you can even stylize it more. So for instance, let's say I'm gonna save this one. So now you have these 3 drawings here. Technically, not 3 drawings, but 3 images, 3 renders that are very different. So let's say you want this one. You can render it, and the great thing about rendering it is that you can stylize it even more. So let's say I'm gonna create this. You can even bring channels in, right? So you want just the sky mask, right? Because you really like the sky mask, you can just Photoshop that. You can bring the material IDs, so you can bring all the color pattern that but just for that as an example right now, I'm just gonna render it, and I'm just gonna call it test 2 here, and I'll show you guys. Once it's rendering it, you can go to the post-production tool, and then even do some AI post-production. You can even do the post-production here and change the setups and everything. So it just works really good. All right, so now that it's done, you can go to the AI post-processing. So once you click the AI post-processing, you can go to that image that you did, and you can stylize it even more. So for instance, let's say I'm just gonna go to the AI style transfer here. And let's say you want something not realistic, but you something more like a, like a pencil sketch. So I can come here to this pencil sketch, come here and say, I want the matching weight to be 0.9, but I want the transfer weight to be 0.5. And then you click on it and it will stylize the whole image. So that's something, again, you can bring to Photoshop or an Illustrator, or and then being able to generate a very stylized elevation, or or in this case an ISO or whatever it is that you need. But that's a way that you will stylize your images. So now that it finished rendering, you see how that pencil sketch gave me this. Now it's still not perfect, right? You see how it's still making mistakes, and maybe it's cutting a little bit here, but it's definitely giving me some very nice ways. A lot of it is just you might need to do a little bit of change a little bit of few things, but you see how cool it looks now, the pencil sketch. And that's how you stylize images. You kind of bring maybe 3-4 images that you like together and create your own style. And that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, I commend you guys. We have gone through pretty much in depth of how to, the views work, how does an isometric works and alignment works, how do we use the section tools, and if you like the video, guys, please support the channel, like and subscribe, comment on the section below on what things you would like to see, and I'll see you in the next one.